Alright, so this is the first part of my transmission rebuild. The transmission has been removed from the car. I hope the videos turned out fine. I disconnected it from diff. I already took a video, but be aware there's two screws up top. This is the top of the transmission. These are the mounts, the differential, sorry. Then there's two nuts here. These are the bolts and these are the nuts. And then there is this last one, which you cannot see from underneath because there is this shield which sits down here and guards the nut. So you cannot see the nut first. So first you have to remove these three screws, and then there's one last nut, and then you can finally simply pull it out. You need a bit of oomph to get it out. It was quite hard for me, but managed in the end. And then you can put your transmission on a suitable desk. I used this IKEA desk and forced it with a second piece of plywood because otherwise it bent too much for my liking. I was not able to remove the shift linkage, so I just left it in. Put two holes in the table and then put it on there like that with the diff side up. Here's your marker so you can research exactly what the specs of your transmission are. Mine is a 6-speed manual for T56, and there's probably a failure of the reverse. Well, I hope it's only the synchro. You have to first, up top here, remove these 15mm. You can see here there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 through here, 7, 8. And once you've loosened them up, I've already loosened them, you can remove them. So there's gonna be places where you can put a big screwdriver in. Do not press upwards against the small side, but rather like this. And then you can like take a rubber mallet and hammer it down. I'll show you. But don't stay in one place. Do it here. Then there's this part. And once again, go like this, not like that. Wait, did I show it right here? Yes. Down like that. And that should be it. You can sometimes, if it doesn't help, just hold it like this and hammer from bottom upwards. Here we are. This looks very nice. Completely clean. That's great. No shavings anywhere. Very happy to see that. Okay, out of precaution, because my gearbox is in very good shape, I will not use these filthy gloves. I'd rather wash my hands more often, because these are with plenty of metal shavings from the other broken transmission. You can see it everywhere. So bare hands it is. Let's inspect the magnets, because they're always a curious thing to look at. And there's not much on them. Looks really good. That's not bad. These are parts from the broken transmission I've got, and you can tell there's been some nightmare-ish stuff going on there. So first things first, I'd say let's remove this ring. For that I have this plier, so you can go in it is. That's the first ring. Here you go. And we'll move on to the next part. Now we should be able to remove this first bearing. Then there should be a second ring. Here we have another one of these. This one seems a bit loose, but I guess that's how it's supposed to be. There's quite a bit of play, which means it should be very easy to take off. What to do next? It's simply very high tolerance. This ring has to be taken off, and then you should be able to simply lift out the gear, but sometimes it's gonna be on there pretty tight. So after having to hammer with my rubber mallet very carefully a few times, I think I've almost got it. Yes, here it comes. There it goes. Oh Lord. Now look at that. These are ground down. No. That's sad to see. I'm not sure this is fixable. But next up there is a few rings in here. Not sure if this is supposed to look like that. That's how it came out, so I'll just leave it like that. Then we have this synchro. Let's look at the synchro. This synchro also looks quite worn, so I guess I'll replace that too. Next up is the bearing. Yep. Next up, there's nothing to remove from here, but this clip. Alright, after a lot of fiddling and filing down the head of this tool, I was able to remove this tiny spring clip ring, because people get the correct tool. This is terribly made, so I had to file the head down to actually fit into the hole like that. But then I was able to remove it. It was right here. We should be able to just lift this entire unit out, and we can. This also looks quite worn. Oof. That's rough, yeah. Damn. There's small particles. I guess we'll find out. Of course, from below it looks better, but I'm pretty sure you can't just turn this around and pretend nothing happened. The rubber or plastic rings here, the washers actually look fine. We have a pressure plate, this thing here. This sits at the bottom here. It's supposed to be like that to hold these three standoffs underneath the 3 fingers. Alright, next up you should be able to simply slide this gear out. Next up now, this bearing actually stays on. We just remove this clip, and after that we should be able to remove this whole unit with the fork. Alright, there it is. That's a bigger ring, and it sits underneath this piece here, so you have to open it quite a lot to get it out, like actually. Yes, perfect. Down below it's again got a retaining clip, and here we can see luckily the synchro and everything looks in good condition. We can see there is a cage bearing inside this gear, and we can lift both at once. Oof, these look a bit chewed up. Yep, that's no bueno. I have now taken the synchro ring from the other transmission, because this is what mine looked like. It's ground down, and here you can see this one is perfect on both sides. This one was still fine on this side, but I'd rather go safe and take this one. So the new reverse gear has finally showed up. This is the old one, this is the new one. I was a bit scared at first that this height right there is different, but I think it's just optical illusion. And once again, you can see the difference now between the old and the new one. Here the teeth are completely ground off, and here you can see the nice edge. Looks pristine, of course. And now we can also test if it was a combination failure of two things. That's the block out ring of my old transmission, and on here it just slides around. There's no grabbing onto the gear whatsoever. Then it just slides here. So of course there was no way I could have engaged reverse. You can see there's plenty of play. And now if I put it on a new one and it grabs, then that means that the gear failed. And if it doesn't grab, that means the gear, at least this part, is still good, but the synchro, the blocker ring has failed, and the carbon fiber has been worn down too much. So let's see. Nah, nope. Also the blocker ring is done, not only the gear, which I expected, because that would have been strange if it's only one of the two. But yeah, I can easily turn it. There's also not as much play, but still play. So the blocker ring is bad as well. Everything else has been taken care of. I've pretty much finished almost everything up. I've put the new synchro assembly in here. Looks perfect now. Not sure if it was the 6th gear or the 5th gear. I think 5th gear is which I also really replaced. But yeah, put brass bushings on the shift fork for reverse, and not sure if you can see it. Probably not. Maybe from over here. There is also brass bushings on this shift fork. Technically I have even more, but I didn't want to go even lower, because then I would have had to take this off as well. And since I want to drive the car this summer still, I'm not gonna do that. So next part will be when the blocker ring arrives. I ordered 2 because shipping was so expensive, so I thought might as well buy 2. You never know when you need them. And yeah, that'll be the installation. Finishing up, I didn't find a seal which would arrive in time, sadly, so I bought some high temp transmission silicone sealant. I will definitely not do it like this guy did. that's a no-go. I will simply put tiny drops, like a bit here, to fill this part where it ripped, a bit there, be as like minimalist of the material as possible, because I don't want anything happening like in the other transmission. So yeah. Alright, so the blocker rings have finally arrived in the mail. I was anxious to await their delivery. They are now with the grooves for the oil instead of the carbon fiber right there, which has been worn out. And now for the moment of truth to see how they fit. Oh wow, so actually the gear itself is fine. It's the blocker ring that failed this boy, because you can see there is a gap and you can twist it totally fine, but then when you put pressure it grabs the gear and it comes off again. Let's see with the new one, because I've heard that you might have to put a bit of you might have to sand a bit where it's been burnished, but no, this turns totally fine, and when you press it locks. Yeah, this is totally fine. Comes off again. That's great news. Oh, I'm so happy to see that, because the crazy part is the broken transmission did have the same upgraded reverse blockout, but for some reason he killed it. Yeah, this is great. So I'll continue the install now. Priming the assembly, I've put the slightest amount of the transmission oil, that's 1/2 of the oil I'm gonna use, on my finger, just a small bit, run around, and then put the blocker ring on, so you just make sure that there's already a bit in the grooves. Alright, I have now put the blocker ring on, then the small spring you can see, then the gear, which is of course still free moving, and next up will be this ring, which simply goes on top like, come on top there, like that, and then you hold it in place with the clip. Alright, so this is gonna be the final step. The last package has arrived from the States, which was from Hawk Racing, the clip ring set for the T56. I ordered these, I think it was like, Jesus, 20 bucks or so, and a new thrust washer which sits on the synchro assembly for the reverse, because as you can tell mine is pretty crushed and flattened out, so that's also been replaced. I've put the tiniest amount of high temperature silicone. You don't need a lot, because this gets pushed down, so you don't want to squish silicone into your transmission. I've seen in the engine and the other transmission what that does, so better too little than too much. And yeah, next step will simply, because I've installed this new ring, the clip, I've used the new one right here, then this is one of the old ones, but it's still nice and tight, so I don't really think that's gonna cause a problem. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Next step will be taking the housing, which is of course perfect on the inside, and putting it back on, tightening the screws up to specs. I'll have to check that, and then we'll be done and ready for the install.